Hi guys, and welcome back to part 5 of the Trasition event recording. Now, we've sort of looked so far at how we're going to recruit our PDIs into the training system. And of course then, once they progress through that system and they qualify, the likelihood is that they will come on board as a franchisee within our driving school. Now, there are lots of key things that we need to have in place before that happens. The first one is an operational manual. And I found out that, crikey, going back about 6-7 years ago now, this manual has turned out to be one of the most important factors when it comes to controlling and making sure that your new franchisee is going to follow your operational system. Now, we probably all know in the driving school industry that very few, I mean, obviously the bigger boys do, you know, the nationals, they would have something in place. But most smaller driving schools generally don't. And what you have to understand here is that we don't operate franchises in a true sense, like your McDonald's, for example. But we need to get as close to that as we possibly can. And really what the operational manual should have is a whole list of your own operational procedures as a driving school owner, in order that when your new franchisee comes on board, it's relatively easy for them to follow. Because if you don't give them some structure to follow, then of course they're not going to follow it. And what they will do is go out there and do whatever they think is right. Now, again, we've talked in this presentation about why I don't really recruit qualified ADIs. And this is the main reason, is because they struggle to follow our procedure. They think that they can go out and do things the way they've already done them. Now, with people that you've trained and cloned, for want of a better word, it is a bit different because, of course, they only know the system that you've taught them. And I would imagine that you know, not only have you taught them how to qualify, but you would have instilled your business ethics and ideas into them during that process. Then we're going to take a look at diary management. I'm going to go live into our own diary, because our online diary is the way we communicate with all of our, both our franchised and our employed instructors. And it is very underestimated how important a central diary system will be. And again, I've heard lots of different methods used, Google Calendar, and all sorts of bits and pieces. But you got to be thinking about scale here, and you've got to have something that your guys can access. Obviously, you need to be able to access it from central admin and control it. But it's a way of keeping track on, you know, who has lesson slots and who doesn't, and how you're going to manage all that. And then we're going to look at a few documents that we use. Now, these documents, again, are like so important. And if you're just starting out on this process, I'm probably going to struggle to really get the message across to you just how important and powerful these documents can be. So we're going to look at a customer payment sheet, and I'll go and explain each of these in turn. Then we're going to look at our signed lesson sheets. And then also we'll look at our terms and condition, both in car and in the post. The other thing we need to consider is ongoing training. Now, generally speaking, in the driving school industry, the amount of training that is offered to newly qualified instructors is virtually non-existent. You know, again, the nationals do some. Local driving schools, I don't know, some may not. But we all know as well that there are a huge number of ADIs in the industry that have probably never done a day's training since the day they qualified. And that probably explains some of the stories that we hear when it comes to, you know, poor tuition. Okay, so I'm going to explain what we do as a driving school and how we offer ongoing training and how we monitor that. And I'll go a bit deeper into explain that system. And finally, something we only actually started it on the 1st of January this year, and that's a workplace Facebook group. And I had sort of reservations about opening it. As we all probably know, that Facebook groups for driving instructors are generally a bit of a disaster. You've only got to look at the big forums that we have running at the moment. And there all sorts of crap gets banded around. But a workplace group is quite different. And I'll go into that, and I'll go in live and I'll show you what sort of content we put in there and why I think it's going to be a massive benefit for us and for our franchisees. Okay then, so let's go back to the first one, which is the operational manual. So I'll just break out of the presentation. Now, I'm not going to sort of go through every single page here, but I just want to give you an idea of the sort of content that you need in an operational manual. Now, of course, if you're a member of ADI Success, then you can simply go and download this document, and then you can just edit it for your own needs, which is going to save you a hell of a lot of time. But again, the point I need to make is, guys, I wouldn't even consider taking on a franchisee unless you have this structure in place, because you have to set your stall out from day one. Because believe me, as I've already mentioned, if you don't give them guidance, you just simply won't be able to keep control. So once they've qualified, you then, of course, you need to have a meeting with them. And that meeting, first of all, is them deciding whether or not they're going to come on board. And as I said, we've only ever had 2 that haven't come on board. And what I would do in that meeting, I would run through this operational manual with them. So if we look at the first one, working hours and payment, we would have explained this to them when we signed them up as a trainee. The first thing we're going to do is they're going to choose the hours. They're going to choose the days and the hours they wish to work and be available. And then we're going to build out the online diary to reflect that. So in this particular one, then I would go into some detail about how we allocate customers and all that type of stuff. Now, number 3 is invoice procedure. And the invoice procedure, again, very important. And I've made mistakes on this in the past. You need to be crystal clear how this is going to happen. Now, we have a bookkeeper. You probably won't to start with, so you're going to be doing this yourself. Now, what happens is they essentially work, so if someone starts with us, let's just say on the 1st of February, so they will work a full month. And on the last day of the month, we send them an invoice for our franchise fee, plus any customer referrals. So I've already mentioned our current franchise fee is £268 a month. That doesn't include a car, that's just a flat franchise fee. And then however many pupils we've given them during that month, so let's just say 5 for argument's sake. So that would be £268 plus 5 referral fees, which would be £50. So they get invoiced that on the last day of the month. They then have 14 days to actually make that payment. It has to be paid by backs. We don't want cash, we don't want checks, we don't any of that stuff. We need to keep life very, very simple. And you need to bear this in mind as you scale, because what you do with 1 or 2 is quite different than what you have to do with 30 plus. And that works extremely well. Now, what's happened in the past before I had that structure is that some of them would pay you on the first day of, the moment that they get the invoice, they pay it, basically the 1st of the next month. So in this case, 1st of March. But some of them, it would get later and later and later and later. And before you know it, instead of paying you on the 1st of March, you end up at the end of March or even into April, and you just completely lose control. Okay, so the process I have, because they have to pay their franchise fees by the 14th of the month, I have a reminder set up on the 15th of the month. I go into our online banking system and I just check that all the franchise fees have been paid. And I don't really mind when they pay them, anywhere between the 1st and the 14th. And about 50% of them do actually pay within the first few days. And the rest, somewhere in between. And of course, you do get a bunch of them will leave it as long as possible and pay on the last day, the 14th. But if for some reason somebody hasn't paid by the 15th, I send them a personal text from me. Basically want to know where it is. Now, it's not that they're trying to avoid paying it. They just simply forget sometimes. And they just need a little reminder. And it's not a thing I have to do very often. Probably once every 3 months, maybe somebody may forget or be a bit late. So I just chase them up. But the thing I need to stress is that you can't do this ad hoc. You do need a system in place. So the system is the reminder, flashes up on my screen on the 15th, check the bank. If there is anyone in there that hasn't paid, I send them a text. And they need to know that I'm sending them a text because I'm chasing them. I'm on it. Because believe me, they will milk it if you don't keep a control of this. So really important. Number 4 is loyalty bonus. So loyalty bonus, once our franchisees have been with us for 3 years, we give them a £40 a month discount. Simply because, once someone's been working that length of time, I may go 3 months and not even giving them a single pupil, simply because they're able to keep themselves fully booked. So these are less reliant on me than what new franchisees are, which, are quite customer hungry at the beginning. And that's why I give them a loyalty bonus, because, the temptation for them is obviously to leave, and I don't want them to do that. And it's only right that we repay that loyalty by giving them some sort of discount. New pupil referral fee, we charge them £10 as a one-off payment for each new pupil that we supply them. Franchise free weeks, all of our franchisees get 2 weeks, and when they don't have to pay their franchise fee, they can take that. It has to be taken in at least a week at a time, but they can take that whenever they wish, but it has to be taken in the calendar year. Franchise support and training. Well, we have Andy is the office manager, and Sandra works under him. So if there's any queries to do with anything admin-wise, as in diaries and bookings and all that type of stuff, then they obviously can contact us here at the office between 9 and 6. And then we have mobile support after that time, should they get any issues. When it comes to training support, so anything on a technical nature, then Lee is our training manager, and they will have his mobile number as well, so they can ring him whenever they choose. So in your case, again, when you start, you're going to end up doing both of these before you get to a size where you can delegate that off. But make sure you've got a structure in place that they know, what they need to do. The online diary system, which I'll go into in a second or so, we've got a little video recorded that just shows them basically how to operate it, how to add pupils, how to take them off, and how all that works. Practical test booking and test day procedure. I find, my years of experience, that this is a very, very important document, that they know what the procedure is when it comes to booking tests and what needs to happen on test day. I'm not going to sort of troll into it now, but very important that that's in place, because if they get this wrong, this is going to be costing people money, and it ain't going to be me. Tuition vehicle, we don't get involved. Obviously we have employees and we have to supply them a vehicle because the vehicle is ours, belong to the driving school. But when it comes to franchisees, we don't get involved with the vehicles. So they can pretty much have whatever type of vehicle they like, as long as it's not like a 10-year-old Mondeo or something, if they still exist. So it's up to them really, whatever they want to choose. They can have whatever colour they want. It does an absolute nailed on requirement is that they will have to have our vehicle livery, and they will have to display a headboard. We pay for the livery, and we supply the headboard. Driving school uniform. Again, this is always an interesting topic for debate. Now, you will have your own ideas as to where you want to go with this, but just take a few moments to reflect that when you're starting a new driving school, it's so important to get this right from the beginning. And it depends on your vision. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I just don't like jeans, trainers in the workplace. That's my preference. And bearing in mind, it will be your preference. You're the driving school owner, and it will be your brand that's being reflected on a local basis. And when you have one guy running around, that's one thing. When you have 30 running around, that is completely something else. And you will find this extremely difficult to change if you don't get this right from the beginning. So our guys need to wear polo shirts, every colour under the rainbow. I don't really care what colour they are. And we have our driving school logo embroidered on that polo shirt, that garment. They can have jumpers, they can have shirts, they can pretty much have whatever they like, as long as it looks reasonably smart, but they all must have our driving school logo. We use a local company called Jewel, and we paid a one-off fee many years ago, £50 or something, to set that logo up, and now we get to use it for free, as long as we buy the garments off of them. So I like to think when I drive across town and I come across them, they do look smart and presentable, and of course they reflect our brand. And this is something that you really do need to be paying some thought to, you know, the personal clothes that they wear, and also your livery. Because if they're not doing this at the beginning, you will really struggle, as I've already said, to get them to do it at a later date. Okay, the use of mobile phones and hands-free equipment. This seems to be something that's getting updated on a regular basis. And of course, virtually all cars are now coming with hands-free connection, Bluetooth and all this type of stuff. I need to stress, this is not a legal requirement, by the way, but I need to absolutely stress to them that under no circumstances should they ever be using a mobile phone, whether hands-free or not, during a lesson time. And this is, as I said, this is not to do with the legal requirement. This is simply down to the fact when someone is paying you for 2 hours of your time, you need to dedicate that entire 2 hours to them. Now, we generally communicate with our guys by text. We don't want to be ringing them. But when we send them a text, we have to make it crystal clear. Please do not reply to this text during someone's lesson time. You need to do that after and between lessons. And should it come to our notice that you have been observed using a handheld phone, we will terminate your franchise agreement with immediate effect, because as a PR exercise, this will be a disaster for us. And if that happens, then unfortunately you're going to be going like with grease lightning. What you do after you've dropped the pupil off, so, for example, you're traveling from A to B to your next lesson. If you then choose to use hands-free equipment, that's entirely up to you. You're a very qualified driver. You make your own decision on that. The technology is there. I use it. I have no problem with that. But that's a call you make. I don't think we should be using it in front of pupils. But what you do yourself, it complies with the law, and that's entirely up to you guys. Lesson and payment records, I'm going to go into in a little while, along with report sheets and terms and conditions. We do have a mission statement. Again, how many youngsters pay any attention to it, I'm not actually sure. But I think a lot of parents do actually look at it. And it is something we're about to revise again now. And I can update that later. And then, of course, finally is the franchise agreement. And what that entails, because that's what they're going to sign. It's not really a contract. It is an agreement, slightly different. Because we don't tie our guys in on long-term deals. We've just updated it to 2 months. So anybody that signs up has to give us 2 months before they leave. And it's pretty standard, really. As I said, if you're a member of ADI Success, simply go to the member site. You can download this document. It's the document we currently use right now. You can just go in there and make a few edits that will make the document your own, depending on your own operational system. But again, before I leave this subject, just once more to stress just how important this is. If you don't have a structure, how can you expect anyone to follow it, guys? This is massive. You absolutely need one of these in place. If you don't, I assure you, it will come back and bite your ass in the future. Okay, let's take that one away then. Okay, so that's the operational manual. Next thing up is the diary management. So again, I'll break out and I'll go live into our diary just to give you some idea. Okay, so this is our diary system. We use Driving School Online, as you can see up here. We've used this system now for about 7 or 8 years, I think. Never had any problems with it. The good thing about it as well, it grows with your school. I think the basic fee is about £99 a year. and then after you add a certain amount of instructors to it, I think it's 20, then it goes up to the next £199, and then it will keep on going up depending, you could have hundreds on here. So it's future proof. You can use it for as long as you want. So we look at view diary. Now this is the thing that we like about this, because this is our main source of communication. So of course we take all the calls here in the office. So when the phone rings, we cover 8 different areas. So we have to be able to find which instructors, for which areas and what availability they have quite quickly, because we've got folks on the phone. So let's just say, for example, we get a call come in from Taunton. Andy and Sandra in customer services, they obviously know which instructors cover which particular areas. So in this case, we have Lee Taylor. She was actually the last franchisee to qualify and come on board last year. So this is her diary. And the reason there isn't anything on a Friday, because she doesn't work with us on a Friday. On a Friday, she works in her family business and she does admin for them. So Fridays is her time. But you can see she works the rest of the time. Now, the reason for the different colours is, of course, the green ones are all new customers. These guys are on the current 10-hour Trasition C deal. So they're sort of relatively, they're literally within their first 10 hours. The orange ones are the ones that pay as they go. They don't pay on the day. They're still prepay, but they do pay, week by week. So a week in advance. And that's why they're in orange, because, of course, they pay a different rate. And this one here is driving test. So we generally put the tests in red so they just show up. So very quickly we can see what's going on. But the point I want to make here is that we're not actually that concerned with what Lee is actually doing, because that's not our function. This is her business, remember. She's just simply working under our umbrella. What we need to know is what gaps does she want us to fill? Well, at the minute, she's not asking us to fill any gaps at all. She only works till 4 o'clock on a Monday and Tuesday. And you can see she works a bit later then, and then she works on a Saturday. But let's see if I can find someone else in here. So Tracy. Right, okay, this is a better example. Now again, Tracy doesn't work with us on a Friday either, because she doesn't work in a no folk zone. And she's always done that, and she wanted to retain that. So that's the power, I guess, when you're selling this to people, that they can do exactly what they wish to do. So working on the 4 days, she only works till like 4 o'clock. But the thing to stress on this diary are these blue ones. These are the ones we're interested in. So Tracy also covers Taunton. So we get the phone call from Taunton. We've already looked at Lee's. She didn't have any availability. Straight away we can then go over to Tracy's diary, and we can see that she's telling us that 8:30 to 10:30 on a Thursday morning is when she would like us to fill that slot. And then she has another one here from 2 o'clock until 4 o'clock to be filled on a Tuesday afternoon. Now, if the person calling is able to fit into either of those 2 gaps, fine, then we just book them straight in. And that's how it works. So again, just to clarify, the only thing we're really interested in on this diary are these 2 blue ones, because that is Tracy telling us, please can you book these 2 slots for us. And this makes our diary management really quite easy. Okay, so if we go look at a different example. So here's Gary's. Now you can see Gary has a few more here. So he has 2 available on a Monday and a Tuesday morning. He has 1 here on a Thursday. He has 1 on a Friday. So a bit more availability. So he's also in Taunton. Depending on what the potential customer is after, it could be that our first 2 examples weren't able to accommodate that, but now in this case possibly Gary can. And it really is a case of just flipping through. each of our instructors in that particular area to see which one we can accommodate. Now, if we're in a situation where we simply cannot, we just don't have availability to match the potential customer request, then what we do is text them all and say, look, we have this person in Taunton, this is the times they need, can any of you guys accommodate that? And of course, the reason they haven't actually put it on a diary is because, as we all know, some pupils are more flexible than others, and it could be that they could move someone around and actually get them in, and all they do then is just text back to us and say, yeah, I can do that one, and we'll book them in. We don't book anyone in unless we've got a slot to book them in to, so I think that just drives everyone nuts. So that's not something we would do. So that's how we control. The diary is live, instantly live all the time. So the moment they make a change, wherever they may be, it will update on our system. And of course, we need live information the moment that we log in. But whether you choose to use this type of diary, you've got your own ideas, obviously up to you. But just understand the importance of your diary is very, and I do speak to a lot of folk that don't really fully understand the importance of a diary system. It is a means of keeping control of your franchisees and it being on the pulse, if you like, as to exactly what's happening all the time. And this is a great way to do that. Otherwise, if you're not careful, you'll be losing control. If you're ever in a situation you don't know what your franchisees are doing, that's a recipe for disaster, and you might want to take a look at that one. Okay, I'm going to close that one down now. Okay, so that's the diary management system. And now we're going to have a quick look at the customer payment sheets, signed lesson sheets, and terms and conditions. Okay, so this is our customer payment record. Now, if you operate prepay, and I've sort of covered prepay quite extensively in part 4, believe me, this document, again, is so powerful. And if your guys are not using this, it's going to cause problems. Because I've had problems when our guys have not been using this. In fact, I had to sack off one of my franchisees because he just simply refused to use it. And it caused us a lot of bad PR. So, okay, basically then this is how it works. We take the booking and then we text the details across, or we add it to the diary, and we inform one of our franchisees, little John here has just paid 10 hours. So he's paid either £270 or he's paid £250, depending on circumstances. And what they need to do then is pull this payment record out. We have one obviously for each individual pupil, and they write the payment in there, £250, the date that it was paid, and his lesson rate that he will be on. Okay, so off he goes and does the lesson with him. And now what happens in the last 5 minutes of every lesson that we do, obviously we need to do the summary with them and cover off the lesson. But from an admin point of view, this is where this becomes extremely important. So we simply say to him, okay, so you've just done 2 hours today, and this is the date. We're going to deduct those 2 hours from the payment, and this is what you have left on account. Perfect. Now we're going to do that, of course, when they do then, when they're down to 8 hours, 6 hours, 4 hours, 2 hours. Now, where this really becomes important, not only do they need to know how much money they've got left on account. Of course they do. So when they get down to the last 2 hours, or they're out of credit. Now this is really important. Then our franchisees need to say to them, look, okay, so you've now used up your credit. You're out of you've used up your balance. You're out of credit. Let's just say your next lesson is Friday at 3:00. Now, because we work on a 48-hour prepaid basis, they have to make sure, this is absolutely crystal clear, that look, either whoever's paying for your lessons, whether that be you, your parents, or whoever else may be doing that, we would need the next payment by 3:00 on Wednesday at the very latest, because that will be the 48 hours. Now, unfortunately, if the payment doesn't come in, the office are likely to send me somewhere else, and they will reallocate that slot. Now, guys, this may seem a little bit harsh, but believe me, this is absolutely critical. Because what we're saying to them is basically, you know, this ongoing slot every week is yours. If number one, you pay for it, and number two, you actually do it. Because if not, then you know, we're going to allocate it to somebody else that will do it. And this system works extremely well for us. And, you know, sometimes we have to chase them up a little bit, but generally they will make the payment. Now, in our own case, and this is something you want to consider, for current customers, we have 3 options for them to make a payment. They can call us between 9 and 6 working days, and we'll take a payment over the phone. That's still the most popular method, by the way. They can go to our website 24/7, make an online payment, or of course they can bax the details through us. Now, you may have other systems that you prefer to use, but those are the 3 main ones we use. And again, whatever you use, you've got to bear in mind that as you scale, whether or not you can manage that or not. But this is extremely important, this document, because you just don't want people not knowing how much money they've got on account. And if you work prepay, I would say this is essential. And if you don't have this, then you're likely to run into a few problems, and your prepay system may well break down. Okay, so let's take that one away. The next one is signed lesson sheets. Okay, so now the one I'm showing you is one that we've got in development right now. It's a bit of a prototype, and Lee is currently testing it as we record this, and we should have the finalized sheet within a few days. So the reason it is quite different and different than one we used before. So let me just explain how we came about this lesson sheet. Lee is obviously our head of training, and he deals with all of our training. I mean, he looks after our trainees, he looks after our qualified guy, he looks after all of them. But his biggest task, of course, is getting trainees qualified. And to fit in with the new standards check type of environment and exam that we now have, he sort of reversed engineered this, and he sort of looked at where PDI struggle and as to why they might struggle when it comes to conducting lessons in the proper fashion. And he sort of started at the end result, really. What exactly do I want them to do? How do I want them to run the lessons? And then what he's done, reverse engineer that, and asked questions on the sheet that will get that outcome. So like in this case, we're going to start off, what was previously agreed to cover on today's lesson? That's a great question. I mean, that's something that needs to be done. So in there, we would put whatever that answer is. What does people want to achieve from the agreed lesson plan? So you know, with client-centered learning now, and we can't simply rock up and say to them, this is what we're going to do. We have to have a conversation with them, and we have to agree what it is they wish to cover. Now, of course, you can lead that with some clever questioning and suggestions, but in the end, it's their decision. So once you've both decided what the lesson is going to be, then the next thing is, what does the pupil wish to achieve? So, you know, we're doing this. What do they wish to achieve by the end of the session? What is the objective? And we found that setting objectives is something that franchisees really struggled with. They just couldn't get it around their head about how important an objective is. So we've sort of changed that around now. And by asking these questions, the likelihood is we're going to get the right answers. So what other areas were identified at the end of the previous lesson for continued development? You know, because there will be ongoing issues that need sorting out. So these are going to go in here. How does your pupil want to help them achieve their lesson goals? So, you know, this will come into, do they want us to give them full talk through? Do they want them to be prompting, you know, a bit of coaching going on there? Do they want to be driving independent and us observing? So you know how it sort of works. But we need to find out from them what we need to do. Who's going to manage the risk? Who's going to do what? You know. So this is what's going to go in here. So we've got a big section in here that we can add any type of lesson notes that we need. And then lesson outcomes. You know, reflecting on the lesson goals, does your pupil feel they have achieved what they wanted? Yes or no? What does your pupil feel they have done differently to improve these areas? So these are all sort of really good, powerful questions, and they fit perfectly with client-centered learning. Now, you'll have your own ideas on this. It is something that we have to get our more senior franchisees to buy into now, because obviously the standard check system is in place, which is hugely built around client-centered learning. And they have to do this and not sort of carry on doing what they've always done for the last 10 years. So it's quite important. Now, that's fine. So that's sort of how the lesson sheet is mapped out. But what's really important from my point of view, and what will be important from your point of view as the driving school owner, are these next things. So, of course, the name's going to go in here, and the date of the lesson, and the lesson time, okay? Now, if your franchisee turns up late, like 9:10 for a 9 o'clock lesson, I think it's imperative that they apologise. Oh, real sorry, I've got bogged down in the traffic. And as long as you mention it, most people are absolutely fine with that. It's when you don't mention it and you try and smooth over it. And we can always offer to add it on at the end if it's suitable for both them and the instructor. And if you were like half an hour late, then you probably need to offer them a refund or make it up at some time in the future. So that's quite important that we have that in there. Now, if we go down the bottom, date, time and meeting place of next lesson. Again, really important, guys, because as you scale and you start to look after more and more instructors, this will become really important. Because if you don't put in there the date, the time and the meeting place of the next lesson, and they get the date wrong and they're a no-show, they get the time wrong and they're a no-show, or they get the place wrong and they're a no-show, you've complicated your life then when you come to charge them. Now, if we put those facts in there and they don't meet the criteria, then it's obviously quite easy for us then to charge them the 2 hours for the lesson. But that's why documentation is so powerful, because without documentation, this is going to be ad hoc. You're going to be making it up as you go along. Now, it says up here the lesson time, this will be the lesson, it starts and finishes. I'm sure all of you had occasions when your pupil is asked, can I be dropped off a bit earlier? Can you drop me 15 minutes earlier because I'm, XYZ? Absolutely fine. So you put on there, so in this case, the lesson is 9 to 11. We've dropped them off at 10:45 on their request. So somewhere here in the lesson notes, you need to absolutely document that your pupil asked you to drop them off earlier, and they need to sign it. Okay, if it hasn't got a signature on it, it means absolutely nothing. It must have a signature. So important. And then it's signed off by our trainer as well. So when it comes to management of your franchisee, let's just suppose you get the phone call come in and somebody's mum is kicking off a little bit because your instructor has dropped off their son or daughter 15 minutes early. And we all know that the students don't always communicate with their parents, so they often have two different views as to what's actually been going on. And you explain to the parent, well, obviously I'm not in a car, and nor is the parent. But that's not a problem because we have signed lesson sheets. So I'll just go check with my instructor what happened there. And that's what you do. So you ring them up and say, okay, you had this lesson today. Mum's saying you dropped her off early. Is that the case? And they go, yeah, that's the case. They asked me if I could be, if they could be dropped a bit earlier. Okay, great. The next question is, did you document that on the lesson sheet? Yes. Okay, and the final question is, did the pupil sign the sheet? Yes. Perfect. Okay, I'll go back to the parent, ring them up and say, yeah, your daughter we did drop them 15 minutes early. Your daughter asked if she could be dropped off early. She did sign the lesson sheet, and that's it. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Perfect. That is so simple to be dealing with. But if you don't have this, you're in a rocky place, because it will be just, you're not there, parents not there. It will be then coming down to what your instructor said, what the pupil said, and it's a nightmare. So from an admin point of view, you absolutely need to have this in place. Now, what if we go back to the instructor and he didn't document it, or he documented it and the pupil didn't sign it? That is a completely different issue altogether, because now you don't have proof. And the likelihood is that somebody's going to have to give them a refund, and it ain't going to be me. So that would be the price to pay if they don't fill this out. If this actually was one of our employed instructors, that's severe enough for me to be giving them a warning, because clearly that is breaking of our procedure. Okay, so that's why they're important. Now, you may wish to do your lesson sheets differently, but the main point is that it is making sure that they have the date, the lesson start and finish time, anything that occurs within that lesson, and then sign off. And again, why this is also so important is because when you do this, it's virtually impossible for your pupil to come back and say that, we're just going to do the same things every week. We're going round and round in circles. We're driving aimlessly around. We all know that goes on. That's almost impossible to do with this, because we're always giving them the option as to what they wish to do. So that eradicates all of that stuff, and it's a way for you to keep control of your franchisees and know what's going on, because they have to get this thing signed. Okay, let's leave that one. Okay, so let's just have a quick look at terms and conditions then. Okay, so here's our terms and conditions. And again, you absolutely need to have this in place. And the main thing, as far as we're concerned, driving lessons cancelled at short notice or missed for any reason whatsoever, less than 48 hours before the lesson start time, will be charged in full. We run zero tolerance. We have done now for nearly 3 years, and it works like gangbusters. But this needs to be in place, fully documented, because there is no such thing as a verbal agreement. Everything has to be documented. And we send them this in the post. And the reason we do it in the post is, of course, we can't rely on email because they may not read it. I guess you could text it, but we do send them other stuff as well. So we want to make sure that they're receiving this. There's a bit about the practical test, cancellation, complaints procedure. That goes in our terms and conditions. Now, again, if you're a member of ADI Success, all these documents, the lesson sheets, the terms and conditions, the payment on account, are all there in the member site. You can simply download them, and you can just edit them for your own circumstances. You don't need to make them up again. But terms and conditions absolutely needs to be nailed on. As I say, we post that out to them. We do have another one exactly the same, and this one has a signature field at the bottom, and we do use that in car on the first lesson just to back it up. But of course, this one goes in the post. So we're not saying you have to agree to it. You agree to it when you take lessons with us. That's the way it works. Okay, next thing up here is ongoing training, monitoring, and how you're going to look after that side of things. So the system we have is once they qualify, then of course off they go to work. And under the new system that we've been running now for the last year, the standards check system, it's been the best thing ever, I have to say. And I very rarely agree with the DVSA on anything, but I think they've got this one right. And the difference between newly qualified instructors under this new system in comparison to the PST is just so much better. And from my point of view as the driving school owner, they just hit the ground running, because of course they'd have done 20 hours at least with a real pupil, and they would have been doing all the documentation that I've already just mentioned. So they're sort of well in tune with how things are going to be done. Anyway, they go to work, they're out there for about a month, then Lee books up with them, and he goes and sits in on one of their lessons and just observes, and he basically conducts what would be the equivalent of a standards check. But of course, for our trainee, that's far different than a real standards check, because instead of the examiner, they've got someone that they've been working with for the last 80 hours. So they've obviously got a good rapport with them, and none of this is judgmental. It's just, what can we do to help? And we do that for a month, and then on month 2, we do it again. We sit in on another lesson, and we do it again 3 months, 6 months and 12 months. So we do quite a lot of ongoing training with them, because bearing in mind that it is our reputation management, we need to be sure that they're doing things the correct way. And interestingly, what happens, when I get the feedback from Lee as to what's going on there, is 1 month, there will be a few things there that they're not doing or they should be doing or they're not doing quite correctly, of course, because they're still newly qualified. But we're able to nip that in the bud. Now, interestingly, what happens at 2 months is quite often it deteriorates. They actually get worse. And because I guess the reason for that is that they start getting a little bit confident, they gain a bit of experience, they start cutting a few corners, they start doing things a little bit different than what we'd shown them how to do. And it tends to just go down a little bit. And we usually find there's more things that need correcting after 2 months than 1 month. But you see, this is the whole point, and this is the reason why we need to do this, to absolutely make sure we're on the ball here. We can correct it quickly before we start losing pupils. And in 3 months, then there's usually a massive spike upwards because they've had the first 2 months. We've been able to guide them, and then in 3 months, there isn't actually too much wrong with that. They're pretty much okay then. And the same with 6 months and 12 months. It's just really to stop them getting complacent and any little errors that might be creeping in. And of course we do this as part of their standards check preparation. Now, when their first standards check comes along, which we all know is a bit erratic, could be anywhere between 3 months, 6 months, whatever, the likelihood is that they've already done like 3 standards checks with our trainer. So this isn't something they fear. I mean, this is no big deal. In fact, it's our trainer is more critical of them than what the examiner's likely to be. So therefore, they're going to breeze through their standards check, no problem at all. And we need that culture of, we still know that most ADIs in the industry actually shit themselves when they're going for a standards check. And that shouldn't be the case. I mean, it really shouldn't. And if you're doing the things, if they're doing what they should be doing, then it's a breeze. And it's quite refreshing. So, no problem. So that's how we control our reputation management. And finally, the workplace Facebook group. So again, I'll break out and we'll go in live. Okay, so here we are logged into our Facebook workplace group. So we don't have our trainees in here. This is only for our franchised and our employed instructors. And what we use it for, every time we get a custom review come in for one of our instructors, we add it to the group. Now you can imagine how powerful this is, because there it is. This lad here is raving review about his instructor, who was Laura on this occasion. And not only does Laura get a notification that this is in here, but of course that's great for her motivation, because she can see the nice things that people are saying about her. Sort of makes the whole job worthwhile. But perhaps more importantly, all of our other instructors can also see that. And of course, if you've got 1 or 2 of them getting absolutely loads of reviews and the others are not getting any, they might want to think why that is. And it does serve to, push on a bit of motivation. Okay, so here's some more. So we have lots of reviews to keep them motivated. And here, Lee, our trainer, has actually done a post, quite a lengthy one, but it's all about before a standard check test begins, and about how, what we need to do with your pupil, how to prepare properly for that, and all the type of things that you might need. So again, really useful information. And you have to, why this group works so well is because you have to understand that, of course, our instructors are remote workers. It's not like we have them in the office every day. They work on their own to a certain extent. They're out there doing the job. And we don't have that much communication with them. We book new pupils for them on the diary. But part of our retention process is that we do need to be keeping them up to date with all the latest news and everything that's going on, and trying to motivate them. I see this as going to be a massive retention factor. And of course, it costs nothing to set it up, completely free. And I was really surprised that all of our instructors signed up for this within, I think it was about 5 days. Even 2 of them that didn't actually have Facebook accounts. So there was something on here, another good one. One of our guys had a massive hike in their insurance from 45 to 74 or whatever it was. So we were able to go in there and point them in the right direction to get it like half the price. So that's really good information. This is something that you'll find crop up. One of the guys went to a local PDI meeting, and these things are like, they can be good, they can be really good, and they can be chronic at the same time. It's all about opinions. And like I say to them, if you want to know something, come and ask in the group, because either then I'll answer it, my trainer will answer it. Don't be relying on what people, it's test center tittle tattle. Don't be relying on the opinions of other people. Come to the source and we'll tell you how things are working. So again, quite powerful. There's another one. So we have a Google review for Gary in this case. So we're able to post that in the group. It's all about motivation, keeping them going. Here's Lee's just had her photo updated, so she put that in a group. So that was quite nice. So, that's basically how that one works. But I would certainly have a look at it. And as you start to grow, it will be a very good way to keep communicating with your people. Even if you've only got one instructor, it still worked really well. Great way to keep in touch with them. Okay, guys, so that wraps up part 5 of this presentation. We're going to come back in part 6, and then we're going to be going quite deep into our predictable selling systems for attracting new customers. And of course, we're going to need this because as we recruit new trainees, new PDIs, and they become franchisees, we've got to make sure that we've got predictable selling systems in place to actually keep them busy. Otherwise, they're going to be leaving. So we're going to cover that one off extensively in part 6. Catch you soon. Bye for now.
Please do like and share this video, and also subscribe to my channel. And when subscribing, please do remember to click the little bell. That way you'll get a notification every time I put up a new video. Thank you for watching.